It's buffering. Oh, check, check. We here? What's up, everybody? What's up? What's happening, everyone? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? We are good to go. We are good to go. What's happening, folks? Happy Monday. Welcome to the MuseRoom. Welcome to another exciting conversation. What's up, Jody? Jody, how you feel? Good to have you, Jody. Listen, my mic is on today, Jody. We have a new system. The Wi-Fi is going strong. I think we got it together. I think we got it together this time. I think it's all gonna work. I got cats back in the building. The Kindle's backstage. It's a whole vibe. We're vibes over here. This is exciting. What's up, everyone? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Muse Room. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you. There's so much happening in the world. What's up, Anton? How you feel, man? How you feel? How you feel? How you feel? Sitting on the mill. Hobo Cop, what's up, man? Hobo Cop, I've been thinking about you. I what's up, Steph from Vegas? What's good? Steph is in the building. Hobo Cop, I got something for you, man. I'm really working on this trucker series. Remember I told you guys in Muse Room about this trucker series. I've been ideating and I kind of flushed out like what I believe is a good treatment for it. So I'm excited to present it. But Hobocop, I have you in mind with that one, man. I need you to have you in the building when I do it. What's up, Waylon? What's good? Catherine, I'm so excited to have you back. What's up, Ramon? Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Welcome to the Muse Room. I'm so excited to be in conversation with y'all. We have so much good things to talk about today. So much is happening in the world. But we're back in the building. And it's fall. I got my corduroy hat. I'm not gonna wear it today for the show, but I got my corduroy hat. I got my jacket. I'm ready for the fall. And although this is cup, it still has ice in it. As I'm still on my iced coffee vibe. That's not changing. Nothing is going away. What's up, DJ Commish? What's good, man? It's so good to see you. And it was so good to see you the other day walking on the street, man. There's nothing like New York City, man. When you get a chance to see people like walking on the street, it's hilarious. So it's good to see you, DJ Commish. Devin Green, what's up, man? How you feel? Good to see you. Good to have you in the building, my friend. It's good to be back. Welcome everyone to the Muse Room. I'm so excited. We're going to break down some interesting topics. I see we got some new faces in the building. That's exciting. So those of you who may not be familiar, it's just the Muse Room. We're here to break down issues that happen midweek. So much is happening. There's just not enough space for me to wait until the weekend for the Mike Muse show. There's just not enough news to cover on ABC. So I say, you know what? Let me come to the Muse Room and just do like a midday check-in with you all to see what's happening here. There's the world. There's a lot happening in the world. Y'all are busy out here heading into the fall. I keep telling people that I'm ready for the fall, but y'all keep holding on to summer. But y'all have been busy in the fall already. I guess we're technically not in the fall, but I'm already giving up summer. I'm maxed out on summer, cat. I'm just like, it's time for fall. It's time for pumpkin spice latte.
Don't rush it.
No, I'm rushing it. I am rushing it. I am rushing it. What's up, Ramon? What's up, man? Ramon, the congressional candidate. Ramon, make sure you put your link in the chat, man. Make people go to you and make sure they can find out more about you and kind of what you're up to. What's up, Michael from Shreveport? Shreveport's in the house for the first time. What's up? What's up? Trifuse 900. Why you bald? I don't know, Trifuse. It was God's plan for me to be bald. I mean, how do I answer that, Trifuse 900? Kat, how does one answer why are you bald? I mean, I don't know. It's not.
God.
Take it up to God.
God.
Yeah. And my father. yeah. You gotta ask God about that, man. It is fall when football starts. That's a good way. I'm gonna start saying that. It is fall when football starts. And we know here in the Muse Room, we are big sports fans. Obviously, I'm a big college football fan. Go Blue, baby. But the Eagles, man, fly Eagles fly. I'm also too excited for Jaden Daniels. I'm really excited for the Commanders, what they're going to do. I'm excited for Jordan Love.
If you don't mention Jordan,
yeah. Green Bay Packer fan in the house, clearly. You see the way that I'm looking. What do y'all want to talk about, man? Tell me who's your teams. Check in. Who's here in the city? What do y'all want to talk about? I'll let you know what I want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about what's happening in the geopolitical space, what's happening with Qatar, what's happening with Israel and Gaza, because Qatar has literally entered the chat because of Israel. We also too going to touch base on the Russia and Ukraine war that we're seeing, because now Poland has entered the chat. We have a lot of countries entering the chat, Kat. And then also too, we're going to talk about some domestic issues. The Supreme Court has been busy this week, extremely busy. We're going to talk about some Supreme Court action. And we're going to talk about, since, you know, it is fall, it is football season, but also too is back to school, and there is an alarm at the gate about our children not being able to be at reading proficiencies by the time they're entering their senior year. So that is a major alarm at the gate. And so we definitely want to talk about that. But let me know what you guys are interested in talking about too as well. And as always, I'm always going to answer your questions. So if you put your questions and comments in the chat, as always, I'm going to bring it to you through my answer and what the thought process is. Hey, Maureen Sullivan, what's happening from Watertown, New York? Jesus Martinez, what's happening? Jesus, good to have you in the building. Glad that you are here. And yes, reading is fundamental. So let's just get to it. Let's just start. So I want to start what's happening right now in the geopolitical space. And this is a lesson as we begin to think about what we're going to who we're thinking about for midterms of our elected officials, and then also too as we begin to think about the next presidential cycle, the next presidential election. We really have to pay attention to what is their position and stance and how they are approaching the new world order. I don't want to be that dramatic with conspiracy theory terms, but we do see the geopolitical dynamics shifting and shifting and being reshaped. Particularly when I'm thinking about what's happening with Russia and with Ukraine. And I'm really thinking about how Russia wants to reimagine the USSR. And they want to reimagine it. Putin has always had this vision to bring the former countries that used to be part of the USSR back into the current position that is Russia. He's always wanted this vision, which is why he's going after sovereign nations and territories. Thinking about Ukraine, the way that he wants Ukraine to be back into underneath the Russian arm. Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky want no parts of that. It's amazing when you think about one day you can wake up and just be invaded by another country who just wants it back for no other reason than wanting it back. And there's another dynamic of a psyche that goes behind the person who just wakes up one morning and says, I want to invade a sovereign nation just for the fear factor of I want to reimagine history. This conflict now has escalated in a way that I've always talked about it to you, and why the U.S. needs to support Ukraine. And the importance of Ukraine is there is a national security implication for a couple of reasons. When Central Europe is stable, that is when the rest of the world is stable. So you always want a stable Central Europe. You want Europe to be stabilized for economic reasons. You want Europe to be stabilized from diplomatic reasons. And also, too, Europe is so many European nations are part of NATO. And part of NATO is the Americans, the United States is part of NATO. And so when one country is under attack, we all essentially have to come to the rescue of our fellow NATO nations. I'm thinking about Article 4 and that dynamic at play. And I've always said that it's important that the United States supports Ukraine for those reasons of one, to making sure Europe is stabilized. The second thing too is to make sure that we don't have to put boots on the ground, because Ukraine is not a NATO nation, but Polo borders Ukraine. And Putin has always had this vision of possibly bringing Poland back into the fold as well. Well, yesterday we saw what we have been talking about, what could be possible, is what would happen if Russia was to possibly invade Poland, right? And what we've seen is Russia has allowed drones, about 19 drones, to enter the Polish airspace, causing Poland to enact Article 4 and to call NATO nations together to create what is a response plan in terms of how they're going to proceed with that. And as a result, Poland was able to bring Polish F-116s in an effort, Dutch fighter jets, the Italian fighter jets, and other NATO aircraft to bring down approximately 4 drones that have fallen from the Polish skies that were Russian drones. So here we see that Russia has decided to enter the Polish airspace. Russia, to their position, they say that it was not intended, and that the signals got crossed, but it was not an intended moment to enter sovereign territory, that is Poland. Poland doesn't see it as such. And if anything else, it is really seeing Putin test the limits of what is possible and what is capable, and to see would NATO nations come together and how would they respond. Many are looking at this as a provocation. I personally think that is a provocational act of Russia to test their limits as they continue their offense in Ukraine. There seems to be no signs of slowing down and bringing it to a ceasefire, which brings me back to how I started the conversation about how we need to make sure we're thinking about our midterms and how we need to be thinking about the next presidential cycle. President Trump came into office and also to part of his campaign saying that he'll be able to end the Russia and Ukrainian war expeditiously, that he will be able to end it on day one. And what we're realizing and what President Trump is realizing, what we all have realized, is that diplomacy is hard. Bringing a war to an end is difficult, in particular when you have authoritarian figure like a President Putin that only sees things his way and has already invaded a sovereign nation. That takes a different type of mentality, right? Putin is a different type of leader. He's an authoritarian leader. And so when you're dealing with authoritarian leaders, reasoning isn't exactly part of their constitution, right? It's not part of their DNA. And so President Trump is realizing just how difficult diplomacy is in bringing wars to an end. We see that happening right now. What's happening in the Middle East between the conflict between Israel and Gaza. And now Qatar has entered the Chad. And what do I mean by that? We saw this week where Israel attacked Hamas office that was stationed in Qatar. Qatar has always, not always, but Qatar is an ally to the U.S. In particular, we have military base there. We have our soldiers there. But also, too, Qatar has been the one of the mediators between Israel and Hamas, really trying to find a way to bring that war to a close and to figure out what the ceasefire is going to look like. Part of that was that Qatar has had Hamas office has been located in Qatar, in particular in Doha, in the capital. And what we saw was that Israel proceeded to strike that office, killing the individuals that are associated with Hamas. Hamas has issued a statement and said that it did not take out the leadership that was there of Hamas. And what we're seeing is Qatar react. And Qatar is saying they see this as an act of invading a sovereign nation. And they do see this as an attack of a country that is trying to help resolve this war and this conflict. President Trump has issued a statement and said that, well, I would say President Trump issued 2 conflicting statements. There was one statement that President Trump issued and said that he was made aware by the U.S. Army that there was military action that was happening in Qatar, and then he ordered the ambassador to ring Qatar to let Qatar know what was happening. But Qatar said that phone call came 10 minutes after the incident had already happened. In another situation, we heard President Trump say that he was not made aware of the incident that was happening in Qatar. But what is important to know is, how is this going to change the dynamic now within the Middle East? Will Qatar continue to be the mediator between the two countries, between Israel and Hamas? Will this now create friction between Qatar and Israel? How now will the other Gulf states respond to this dynamic? And are the Gulf states now seeing Israel become more unstable and not to be able to have a trusted stability of governance and that they can trust within the Middle East, in particular as Iran has been a destabilization of a country that, in terms of the Gulf states, and so there is lots of questions now going forward in terms of how will Qatar respond. Qatar has said that they will are thinking about response measures, and I do believe there will be some response measures. But with that being said, it shows again just the difficulty of ending a war, and the difficulty of ending conflict, and the difficulty of finding an exit ramp to a very complicated situation, in particular when you have a leader like Benjamin Netanyahu. If you think about Putin as a difficult authoritarian leader, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also too a difficult leader to engage with, because there's a couple of things working with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In one part, he already was facing legal troubles prior to October the 7th. Israeli officials have already said that military objectives have already been met in Israel in terms of what's happening in Gaza. And so the question remains is, what is still the military outcome that could be achieved with this? We are now facing a humanitarian crisis for the people that are living in Gaza, in terms of hunger, in terms of famine, in terms of starvation, dehydration, and also to the feeling of safety. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the only way that there is going to be a ceasefire is with the total devastation of Hamas. But we already know Hamas is an ideology, right? And so how then do you root out an ideology, right? The question then remains is, in continuing on with this campaign, is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu creating the next generation of militants by watching what is happening unfold to those individuals who are living in Gaza? The other dynamic about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is that the ultra right wing of his cabinet and of his government does not want Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reverse course. They want him to move exactly as he is going forward. The moment that he reverses course, the moment that he begins to look at ceasefire, is the moment that they will stop backing him, and then, in essence, he would lose his government, and he would then unofficially not be prime minister of Israel, and then he becomes a citizen that could be brought up. Well, the charges before him would then continue with him not being the prime minister, and so he has a personal stake at play with not wanting to end this war in Gaza, and so all those are dynamics at play, which goes to the point, it is difficult to end wars. It is difficult to have diplomatic strategy, and it's difficult when you're fighting two different fronts of authoritarian leadership and dynamics with Putin in Ukraine, and now we're seeing what's happening in Poland. Is this a one-off? We're going to see with that, and then also too, we're seeing what is happening in the Middle East. So I'm going to take a moment right there to pause and see if you guys have any questions, any comments that you may have regarding this. Anyway, things that we can clear up that can help make things a little bit easier to understand, and the complexities of it. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Right? What are your thoughts of Poland, the drones in the Polish airspace? Do you think that was a provocation from Russia? Do you think that Russia was testing the strength of NATO and to see what the response was going to be? Do you think Russia will continue on with more provocations within Poland? And how do you see this Ukraine war coming to an end, right? Like, do you see Putin being able just to walk away with nothing? What Putin is saying is that he wants the land, and in particular, and Zelensky is saying, no, I don't want to give up any aspect of land. But if I do, I want to make sure that I have NATO-like guarantees or guaranteed security measures that will ensure that if we are attacked again with Russia, that there will be national security that will come forward and come to the rescue of Ukraine. So it's a very complicated dynamic at play. This is one of the reasons why I'm really interested in geopolitics. Because of all these fascinations. And that's why I say that we're seeing borders being reshaped, thinking about Russia and Ukraine. We're thinking about new positioning. We're seeing what's happening in the Middle East with the Gulf states. We're seeing how they're going to respond to Israel. How is this going to be a relationship to Iran? Will Qatar now still be helpful with the mediation between Hamas and Israel? And so it's a lot that's at play. Waylon, you have a comment. It looks like it's like Netanyahu is strengthening the ideology in an attempt to keep his power. He's continuing the cycle of hate in Gaza. So you're leaning into it. He's doing this for personal reasons, and not for behalf of what's best for Israel. Because the question that we haven't even talked about that we often do, it becomes an afterthought, is the hostages, right? Like the mere fact that this is still ongoing and there are still hostages that are being either possibly still alive, but also to the bodies are still being held captive by Hamas. And so I can only imagine the horror of these families and what they are living through in the day to day, in particular when they see Israel then begin to strike in Qatar. Like, what is their thoughts in the sense of that? Does that become demoralizing for them, that they won't be able to see their loved ones if the loved ones are still alive, or they won't be able to collect the remains of the loved ones? There's something about grief, in the process of grief, and we've all had to experience grief, that if you can't lay your loved one to rest, how then do you properly begin your grieving process, right? And so I think we often are so interested in the diplomatic measures and dynamics at play that we often lose sight of the humanity that's at play, right? And humanity is that there are Israeli families who have suffered, those who have been killed as a result of October the 7th, and then those who are families are still being held hostage, still being held hostage, and those where they cannot release their bodies. I just don't even imagine what they're going through, right? And so this is not a binary conversation, folks. This is a very complicated situation where humanity is to always be at the forefront of this conversation and discourse, and for all those that lost their lives in October 7th and that horrific terrorist attacks. Jason, Shamel, you said, do you think the isolation philosophy of the current administration will leave the U.S. More vulnerable to the volatility of world politics? That's a really, really, really great question. I don't know if it will make us more vulnerable, but I do believe that world leaders are looking at how our response will be. I think world leaders are looking at America's position of isolationism. I think the world is looking at America not wanting to do any interference. And I think that the world is looking at the way that President Trump is not holding Putin accountable after Putin continuously has shown, even heading to the Alaska summit right before, he was still continuing an offense within Ukraine. Leaving the Alaska summit, he was still continuing the offense into Ukraine. Even in this situation right here with the drones being in Poland, he was still going after an onslaught in the offense in Ukraine. And the world, the authoritarian leaders are seeing this. And so they're willing to test the limits, right, of this, which is why I think in part, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was comfortable enough to enter a sovereign nation of Qatar and attack Hamas in an office that was seen as neutral territory. I think the other country, Shamel, that we're looking at right now is China. China is watching how President Trump is responding to Putin and to Netanyahu as they're looking at Taiwan. I think this is why they made the statement when they were at the Chinese military parade recently, where you had Putin, you had the leader from, oh my God, I'm blanking. Who all was there, Kat? Modi, yeah, Modi, the leader from India, Putin, and then Xi was there. And I think that is what I was talking about earlier about the new world order that is impossible. You're starting to see these different dynamics. In India, what India's purpose was there is not like they love China, right? They still have a very complicated relationship with China unto themselves. But what Modi was saying is that if you are going to do secondary tariffs against us, right? If you are going to harm us, we're letting you know that we're our own sovereign nation too as well. And we could align with other countries that are, oh, by the way, authoritarian and that are adversarial to you, right? And so it is the approach of the way that President Trump is doing this that is tempting foreign governments to be more provocative and going forward in ways that they would have typically held a little bit more restraint. So that was a really great question that allows us that. But the vulnerability for the nation, national security, comes a dynamic of what happens if Poland is attacked. What does that look like going forward? And then what happens to homegrown terrorists in terms of those who are more sympathetic to those that we believe are adversarial to us. So really, really great question. Jason Jones says, Putin sees big opportunity to get what he wants. Absolutely. Because there has been nothing that has slowed Putin down moving forward from what has been happening with Ukraine. He who thinks, before I go on to domestic issues, he who thinks, don't forget about the thousands of Palestinians being held illegally in prisons currently, years before 2007. That is part of what the negotiation and part of this. So both sides. So this allows me to bring into conversation about what is being discuss for what a ceasefire can look like. And so both sides are presenting options from Hamas to Israel. And what Hamas is saying is that they want Palestinians who are in prison to be released, a certain percentage of them. And so they're part of negotiation, when there was negotiation, was how many would release, the percentage of it, and how would it be. And so it's almost the Palestinians who are in prison and trade for exchange for those that are the hostages and the remains of the hostages that are still left. So it is a fascinating conversation. It makes things really dynamic. And continue with things that are complicated and challenging is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, just as much as the geopolitical space has been active this week, the Supreme Court has been equally parts active as well. Something that really stuck out. There's two cases of the Supreme Court that I really want to point out. And one has to do with immigration and ICE ability to use racial profiling. Just want to read it to you very carefully, as I want to make sure we have all the data here, is that the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision lifting a lower court's injunction that had placed limits on roving immigration patrols in Los Angeles area. The lower court had barred federal agents from stopping individuals based solely on race, language, occupation, or location. The Supreme Court's decision paused the restriction, allowing immigration enforcement to resume using those factors when determining reasonable suspicion. And so what we're seeing with that is that immigration is allowed to use race as a reason to stop and to do immigration enforcement based upon race. There was something interesting from Justice Brett Kavanaugh that he wrote in his majority opinion that I wanted just to highlight. A part of it, Justice Kavanaugh's emphasized that while ethnicity alone may not suffice to create reasonable suspicion, it could be considered a combination with other factors. So giving the permission for race to be used, and what he's trying to justify, and they were saying that is, although it's not the solely, it could be other factors that determine it, but you can't separate race, and it is okay to include race with that. It kind of goes back, and Shamel can relate to this too as well, when you think about the affirmative action and you think about race-based decisions. The Supreme Court has been very clear that race should not be considered with admissions to college, but when you would hear college administrations, colleges, universities who at one point had race-based considerations for admissions, they would say that race isn't the sole factor of why somebody's admitted, but it is a part of the overall factor, which the Supreme Court did not side with. But in this situation, this instance, they are allowing race to be part of the overall factors that could be involved when ICE decides to pull something over. And I found that to be really fascinating, with the cherry picking of when race can be used and when race can't be used. In the dissenting viewpoint, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, along with Kagan and Jackson, she offered her condemnation with this, and she stated that this decision enables racial profiling and Fourth Amendment violations, expressing an alarm that it could sanction stops based solely on appearance and occupation, particular harming communities. Now, there is still action that could be done because on September 24th, there will be a hearing that will address the fundamental aspect of this lawsuit, which is race-based admission. I'm thinking about college right now. That could go using race to be part of this stops. But before I go to how this impacts the larger narrative of how we're looking at things, I do want to bring into a court case that allows for precedent for race not to be used. It goes back to 1975, where the landmark precedent remains United States versus Rigoni Ponce, in which the Supreme Court ruled that Border Patrol cannot stop a vehicle solely because the occupants appear to be of Mexican ancestry. And so that precedent has always been established in the United States that you cannot use these enforcements based upon race alone. What the court is signaling right now is a shift away from that moment into where race could be considered. And for those individuals who may say, look, I'm not Latino. This isn't my fight. I have nothing to do with this. Also see a lot of the jokes that are happening on social media about, well, you should have voted differently. I just want to be mindful of that. This just isn't going to be a Latino issue. Once you start talking, and the Supreme Court is signaling permission to use race for immigration, how then can you begin to the acceptability of using race for other enforcements that could happen? Driving while black, right? If you look at what's happening in Georgia with the South Korean manufacturing plants that was setting up a manufacturing plants to build batteries here in the United States because of the investments that they have promised President Trump of the guarantees that they will have. The ICE rounded up over about 400 South Koreans, migrants, all because they were South Korean. There were individuals that got rounded up in that ICE raid that were American citizens. These South Koreans were there because they have a certain expertise that it requires to build and stand up a manufacturing facility, particularly that focuses on batteries. That is very different skill set that Americans don't have over here. That is very unique to South Korean manufacturing. I know I have Stephanie here in the building, and Stephanie knows about engineering and manufacturing. When I think about Toyota and the Japanese, when they first came over, it took individuals from Japan to come over and set up these manufacturing plants because the way the Japanese were doing automotive manufacturing was completely different than the ways that American manufacturing was. And so you do need these expertise. And so we're seeing now this intersection of a conversation where you're having immigration that's intersection with tech and innovation, which is also intersecting with diplomatic and diplomacy, and now it's intersecting with Supreme Court and precedent that is going to be had. What is to stop ICE enforcements for going after those of the Black diaspora, right? We've already seen mentions in how President Trump and others view Haitians, right? And those who come from Black diaspora countries and calling them shithole countries, right? And so what is to stop them from stopping an individual who is Black, brown skin, right? Because they may think they're Haitian, they may think that they're illegal. This Supreme Court decision now gives permission to do racial profiling in a very legal way, all right, because of the precedent. Now, the Supreme Court is going to discuss this at large, possibly once this lawsuit comes back to them after September 24th. But this lifting a lower court's injunction in the interim does give ICE and immigration permission to racial profile. One more Supreme Court case I want to bring now, and then I'm going to come to you for questions and comments that you guys may have. So I see you guys lighting up the chat a little bit. I'm curious to see what you're going to talk about. Is what Justice Roberts did solely regarding President Trump's pause on Trump's foreign aid freeze. Justice Roberts issued a temporary administrative stay allowing the Trump administration to withhold approximately $4 billion in congressionally approved foreign aid while Supreme Court considers the legal merits of this emergency appeal. This comes from a lower court's decision had ordered that the government to disperse about $10.5 billion in foreign aid, arguing that the administration cannot unilaterally freeze funds that Congress has approved. This goes to a law that is very rarely seldom used called pocket rescission. That's a mechanism that aims that a president can bypass Congress by withholding funds near the fiscal year's end. The reason why this is such an important piece I wanted to bring up, because it goes to what I have always been talking about, the way that we see this president being able to expand the authority of the Oval Office. There has always been part of the separation of powers. Part of that is that Congress has always controlled the purse strings. Congress has always controlled the budgets. If any of you works in corporate America, which the majority of you do, you understand that once a budget is approved, you have to use those funds for what the budget has been approved for. It's no different than what we are. And I'm overly simplifying. I know some corporations have different dynamics and rules, but in particular nonprofits, if you do get funding from a nonprofit, you have to draw down and use all the money that's been allocated for you, particularly if it comes from federal funding. So there is nuance to it. So I want to be very mindful. But for a simplification perspective, typically you have to use the money that's been appropriated or allocated to you. You must get it down to zero for the next fiscal year so you can get the next round of money to come in. Congress has already approved this budget. Congress has said this $10.5 billion has been allocated for foreign aid and it must be used. What the president is saying is that this funding for this aid goes against the Trump administration's priorities in terms of how they want to issue foreign aid. And so as a result, because it goes against the priorities, they don't want to disperse the funds, right? One could say that is a president's prerogative because they are the president. And this is what the Supreme Court is ultimately going to have to discuss and debate amongst themselves. But this temporary administrative stay is signaling what we've seen from the Supreme Court previously, is that more than likely they are willing to allow the expansion of the executive office authority or the president's authority. One thing we're realizing, all of us, right? I don't care if you're a political expert, a policy wonk, a novice, a beginner. What we're noticing is just how powerful the presidency can be. And what we're noticing is the restraint that previous U.S. presidents, Republican and Democrats, have had when it comes to making decisions, executive orders, in the ways that they engage with Congress and the way they've seen the founding fathers' framework of checks and balances. Because if this is allowed to go forward, and if President Trump and his administration is not forced to be able to disperse this aid, what that signals is that the president can go around Congress when it comes to budget and when it comes to funding, and that Congress no longer controls the purse strings. And then typically that will then just fall into the hands of the Oval Office and the executive branch. That is why this was very important for me to bring this to you, because we are looking at the potential expansion of the executive branch. And we also, too, are looking at the dynamic between the United States Congress and the President of the United States and the executive branch. And it is going to be a showdown unlike anything. And I will say, I'm curious to see how the Republicans respond to this, because this is a part of democracy and governance that is really part of the fabric of the Republican Party, right? The Republican Party, just the Democrat Party, cares about norms, cares about Constitution, and really wants the intent of what the founding fathers have established. And the Congress, in particular senators, they love themselves, right? And they love keeping control of what they can control. And the moment they give up the power of the purse is the moment they give up what is so special and unique towards them. And so we're looking at this confluence of power grab, and it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to play out. I am watching this all together. Let's see. I see you guys have some questions and comments. They're not coming up on the iPad. So let's see here. Let's see. Let me go back. Oh, wow. Lots of things are happening. Waylon, Mike, you're 100% right when you're bringing up the humanitarian aspect of those wars. Roman, this is what the German Nazis did if you didn't speak German. Waylon, hypocrisy at its finest. So you guys have comments. You guys have lots of thoughts, Kat. Y'all are active in the chat. Stephanie, so race Race can be. Oh wait. Oh hi. I don't know how. But yeah. Sorry, Maria. I didn't mean to highlight you on that one. Oh, we're using a new system, so I didn't know we could do that. That's pretty cool. Oh wait, let's go. Okay, this is what Stephanie had to say, folks. All right. Look at technology, Kat. Look at you, Steph. You're on the stage. So race can be a factor to deport, but not factor to admit to university. Full hypocrisy. Wow. Exactly. That's the part I really wanted to bring that up. And in particular, for those of us who have gone to schools that use race-based admission, that has been part of the ethos, right? Of that one. Marina, I'm bringing you back to the stage. Our country is going backwards. This affects us all. But Jason Jones says any race-based precedents will find its way back to affecting Black folks. This is why I really want to bring it in, that this just isn't a Latino issue, right? And this is anyone who has pigmentation, who has different hues, right? Like how safe and how far will these policies be able to go? Shawnee Cooley says, how are they able? How are they able to take people in custody that have a valid work visa? That part right there. Like, how are you able to do that? And to think that there's going to be individuals who now, particularly if they speak Spanish, if they are darker hued, but they are American citizens who have to carry around a passport, have to carry around valid government issue ID to prove that you're an American citizen. That should make us bring pause to every American, no matter what your nationality is. He who knows, he who thinks. A lot of union workers were upset that illegally South Koreans were taking their jobs for much lower wages. Now, that's interesting. He who thinks, I want to leave that up there just for a second. So just to read that aloud, a lot of your union workers were upset that illegal South Koreans were taking their jobs for much lower wages. I don't know what the wages were, but I want to talk about the skill sets that are needed. So the skill sets that are needed to build, I'm going to use a neutral example before I get into the South Korean example. I brought it up, but just in case, I want to reiterate this again. When Toyota came here to the United States, those of us who are engineers in the chat, there's this idea of lean manufacturing, right? And Toyota was the forerunners of lean manufacturing, the way they set up their factories, the way they set up their systems. You can think about total quality manufacturing, TQM. It was a certain way that wasn't the way of United States automotive manufacturing companies, right? And so there was a unique system that they had to bring in to set that up. That's what's happening with South Korea, is that it is the South Korean batteries that are very unique and special that have to be designed a certain way. They have to be assembled a certain way. So then therefore the manufacturing facilities has to look a certain way. And so you need those South Koreans who are used to building not only these plants and working in these plants, but are used to building these batteries in order to set up the system to run. So then you can hire and bring in American workers. And so that is the overall thought about He Who Thinks. But I don't know what the wages are, but that is why they had the South Koreans there. All right, let's see. Jody says, it's wild that Trump is demanding the death penalty for a man who killed a beautiful, not Mexican immigrant who was just here for a better life. It's just unbelievable how it's not all immigrants. Again, this is why that Supreme Court decision was so important about this whole racial profiling. And then I love the word precedent, right? Like, what precedent does it set? What is the signal to the lower courts now who are going to be re-examining this case? That's something I didn't think about till just now. Like, how will they now rule on this case? Now they know that Supreme Court is willing to lift the lower court's order and decision. Is that in the back of the judge's mind now as they move forward the lawsuit? So there's so many implications that are at play. Shamel says the idea of norms have been abandoned by Congress long ago. Our government is being reshaped by our very own eyes. I don't disagree with that, Shamel, at all, because we have always had norms, and our norms has always been the guardrails, right? And Kat, and we often talk about this too as well. Like, democracy has always been a gentleman's handshake. It's always been a gentleman's agreement, right? There is nothing in this Constitution for some of the things that is a must constitutionally. It's just been this understanding of the guardrails. And again, I've been thinking a lot lately about Shamel, how no matter if it was a Republican president or Democrat president, how much restraint it was in the Oval Office, in fear of not wanting to go outside the norms and bounds of it. But this is what I got to be honest, right? We have to be honest with ourselves too as well. It's not like we should be shocked. None of this is really shocking me, right? Because in terms of what the action that what President Trump has done, he said and signaled that this is going to what he was going to be doing on the campaign trail. I think the part that I find more shocking is just how lack of debate it is within Congress about the norms that are existing, right? Because you want debate. Like a president should be able to test the limits of their authority, because so far it hasn't been tested constitutionally. So he has a right to go forward with it. But the beauty of debate and democracy is that you do have other people who should have an open debate and dialogue about how far should the president authority go. And that's what I'm shocked that I'm not seeing in Congress regarding that. And so much now is just being left up to decisions of the Supreme Court. Caesar O'Hare, good afternoon, Noob. In the words of Heather B, don't blame. I voted Kamala. For those who may not be on inside joke with that one, the co-host in the morning, Heather B, that's often her rhetoric is that she says, "Cat, don't blame me. I voted for Kamala." So for those who don't get that joke, shout out to Heather B, who actually is in the chat right now. What's up, Heather B? Heather B says, "Thank you, Caesar." And thank you, Heather B, for being here. What's up, everybody? Make sure you tune in to the happy hour with Heather B. You won't be disappointed. Love you, Heather B. And then Roman says it's even criminal. It's not even criminal. It's civil, same level as a speeding ticket. Thank you, Roman. And don't forget, man, make sure you put all your stuff in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna do one more clip before we have to move on to the next subject, because we're almost at time. Time is flying, Kat. But I'm loving this new technology where we can highlight people into the stage. Yes. This is cool, right? Cool. This is cool. Very cool. Talk about technology. Y'all, the MuseRoom is growing, man. We told you we're experimenting. We're tinkering with things. We haven't gone full scale big yet, so we're trying to like work it out in house. But I'm loving this. Bring y'all on to the stage. Are we living? Rahman says, are we living in a dream, or do you believe Americans are actually fighting back on Trump's policies? I can't help but feel like we're all just watching disaster unfold. And how do we fight back? It depends upon your perspective. I want to offer alternative viewpoints on this. Ramon, there are a lot of people who want this type of immigration enforcement. There are a lot of people in America who see nothing wrong. There is a large part of America who believes that things are being taken from them. And that's what they have expressed in their vote. And so a lot of Americans are pleased with the direction that this president is taking. And so if those Americans are pleased with the direction that this president is taking, and the lack of, to the earlier question and comment, I think that was from Shamel, was that Caesar, is that they're going to show up and vote in this current manner to ensure that immigration enforcement is still holding in this direction that it is. Those who are feeling upset, feeling frustrated, feeling hurt, feeling saddened by it, it goes down to the idea and the power of your vote, right? And how do you then make the change, right? And how do you not become disillusioned by this all, and that you're still able to go forward with finding ways to express your activism, finding ways to express your democracy, and finding ways to impact your change. I was with some people last weekend, and they had so many great ideas about how they wanted to move and take the direction of the country. And then I said, okay, so when do you start? And they said, well, I don't have any time. And I'm just like, well, if not you, then who, right? Like this cavalry like isn't coming to save anybody, right? And so that is part of the big dynamic of it at all. So with that being said, I am going to, with the time that we have remaining, Kat, do we talk school? Do we talk Emmys? Like, I guess we probably end with school. We can hit school. Okay, we'll hit school quickly, then we'll go to Emmys. So we did tease. I think it is important. Reading is fundamental. Y'all, just really quickly, I just wanted to just highlight the alarm that is at the gate. And I don't mean that dramatically. I don't mean that to be an alarmist. I don't mean to be a dramatist. But there really is an alarm at the gate. I have been talking for so long about the economic gap that is existing, but I've always put a caveat that there is an educational gap that is existing that is silent. It is no longer silent. I have been saying for so long that I have so many friends of mine who are in their kids are in private schools. And these private schools, they are learning how to code in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. They have advanced reading. The summer list of books that they're reading is insane that I see them having. And they are applying to colleges at high rates. There's also too a misnomer that kids are not applying to schools anymore. Lies. Just the University of Michigan alone had 115,000 applicants apply for like 4,000 spots. 70. Oh, I know I have Ohio State in here. I don't even know how many applicants applied to Ohio State, right? Alabama. Think about the largest schools. I'm not even talking about like the Ivies, although Michigan's Ivy in our own mind. But I digress. It's not about Michigan right now. As Kat and everybody else rolls their eyes at that statement I just made. But there is a large number of applicants that are applying to college, but yet there's a certain part of the population that still believes college is optional. Fine. You look at our K through 12 public school system, they're not getting the digital literacy. They are getting told college is optional. They are not getting the reading list. They are not doing the things that the private schools are doing. And I'm not here to attack public schools at all. I'm a product of a public schools, a fine public schools system that I went to. I know a lot of us in here went to public schools, and I'm not here to shame the teachers or the public school education. But what I'm saying is I'm all at this point now associating blame and parents, right? If you know that there is this divide that is happening with the public school education or an educational system, what are you doing to fill that gap? That needs to be there. And I have a data point now. There's a data point that has out, and I'll make sure I put it in the link to the study on the YouTube page so that everybody can go back and reference it. But now there is data now that's out for the first time that high school students reading and math levels are on an historical decline to levels that we haven't seen since 2009. Folks, that is an alarm at the gate when our kids can't read. Again, there's an alarm at the gate when your kid's a senior in high school and cannot read, right? We can blame it on COVID. This is the COVID era. I don't disagree with that at all. But at some point, folks, the Calvary is not coming to save you. At some point, you have got to sit down with your kid and you have to do the supplemental reading. Right? There's just no other choice, right? Like you can't keep blaming a teacher, the principal, the school board of education, the mayor, the governor. The onus is on you. I'm not giving parents any cover. And yes, before you attack me, I'm not a parent. I don't know what it's like to juggle a job or two jobs and juggle 3 kids or 4 kids. I get it all. But at that same time, you have got to be responsible with educating and providing the supplemental education to your kids' education. My team member, Kendall, she gave a story in our meeting yesterday with Kat and I, and she was just talking about when she adopted foster children who are thriving and doing an amazing job. When she adopted, and Kendall, I'm so sorry, I might get all the information a little bit incorrectly, but for conversation purposes, she was reading essentially at a second grade level. And just as a matter of over a year or 2 years, she is now reading at the current grade level that she is supposed to be at, and she is excelling. And what Kendall said was that she actually had to take time just to read with her daughter consistently. And she was saying when they're in the car, when they're going to do grocery stores and going to Walmart or Kroger's or whatever grocery store you're going to, they play games, like reading games. They play synonyms, right? Like they do all these things to help really improve the reading and critical understanding of the child to where she's been brought up to grade level. And that's the work of the parent, right? And so again, it is doable for our kids to be able to read. We just have to make time for them. And we have to recognize that there is an alarm at the gate. And now there is a real data point to prove exactly what I've been trying to say. And also to others, I'm not alone in this, but it's a real big concern of mine. And so I just want everybody to Read to your kids. If you don't have a kid, read to your god kid, your aunt, your cousins, whoever. Just start reading. And I think that's going to be part of our takeaway. We always do a movement here as we conclude the show. It's been wonderful rocking with y'all. Is that also, if you guys have any tips on how you gotten your kid to read and advice you can give folks in the chat, because this is recorded live and we do keep the chats going. We do a thing called Muse Movements in terms of how we can give people access to information so that we're just not here on the soapbox. And part of that, we're going to find 2 resources that we're going to post on the YouTube page. And one is Riff, Reading is Fundamental, a ton of resources that gives education and books to students. And then the second one is Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is doing an amazing organization that gives books to children who need and sends you books to children who need. But I think a simple solution, and Kat, we always talk about libraries. Libraries are big here for the MuseRoom. We love our librarians. We love the library. How about this, folks? If you are part of like a church group, sorority, fraternity, I'm calling y'all out. I'm a Kappa. I'm calling everybody out. If you're part of the Links, if you're part of Jack and Jill, Schmel, I'm looking at you. But whatever the thing you're into, the Rotary Club, the Key Club, the Lady Aid Society, whatever your thing is, folks, the American Legion, whatever your organization is, how about you just grab a kid, like some kids, a group of 10, 20 from your church, take them to the library one Saturday a month. Don't overtax yourself, and do a book club. Make them read a book for 1 month. Y'all come together on a Saturday and read and have a book club, right? Be the change in your community, right? Because our kids need it. And it's not that hard to bring them up to reading level, and just talk to your kids in full sentences. That's it. Just talk to kids in full sentences. So, in the fear of becoming too custodial and doing too much, but y'all, I care. I care because the data is out there. This isn't even just emotional based rhetoric. It's evidence based now at this point. And there's an alarm when we've always heard, Kat, right? Like 6th graders can't read or are reading below level. 5th grade, 12th grade. That's because they're going into society at that point. They're out of the school system. After 12th grade, you're out of the school system and you can't read. That is a problem. So alarm at the gate. Y'all, I love you. What a great time we've had, Kat. We did so much conversation. I'm loving all these things. I can just throw people up on the room. Let me just have some fun with this and be super cheesy, right? Just throw everybody up. Everybody gets to the stage. Everybody gets to the stage. Until next time, folks, hit me up at I am Mike Muse, MUS and Sam E on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. I love y'all so much for keep rocking with the MuseRoom. We're growing, folks. Clearly, we got some new technology stuff that's happening. We couldn't figure out the Instagram live thing, but we're going to work on that for next Wednesday. This is going to be a perfect show. Don't you worry. This is going to be a perfect show because we're reading. We're reading how to make tech better with the MuseRoom. All right. I love y'all. Until next time, folks, as I always say, I'm about to end the stream now. Peace.